Skylar Annette Neese was born on February 10th, 1996, in Morgantown, West Virginia. She was the only child of Mary and Dave Neese. Her parents described her as brilliant, outspoken, and fiercely independent. Skylar excelled in school, especially in English and writing. She loved to read, especially mystery novels. Ironically, the kind that would later mirror her own story. She dreamed of becoming a criminal defense attorney, someone who would fight for the truth no matter what. Skylar was also very social. Despite being a bit shy at first, she quickly made friends and was known for her quick wit and sarcasm. She had a close circle at University High School. Among them were Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf. Sheila had been Skylar's best friend since they were 8 years old. They were inseparable: sleepovers, vacations, even family dinners. Rachel joined the duo in high school. She was more reserved, came from a strict Catholic background, and was active in church theater. The three became what many called the trio, but not everyone saw it as a balanced friendship. Some classmates later said the dynamic felt off, that Skylar was often the third wheel in her own friend group, and that Sheila could be manipulative. Skylar's Twitter account, which remains public to this day, reflected this tension. Her posts became increasingly cryptic in the months before she vanished. "You doing something like that is just so shady, and I don't care if we're friends or not. All I do is hope. Sick of being at fucking home. Thanks, friends. Love hanging out with you too." These weren't just typical teenage mood swings. They were signals, ones no one took seriously until it was too late. It was July 5th, 2012, a Thursday night. Skylar had just finished her shift at Wendy's, where she worked part-time. Her father, Dave, picked her up as usual and brought her home around 10 p.m. She seemed tired but in a normal mood. She hugged her parents, said goodnight, and went to her bedroom. The next morning, her father noticed her bed was empty. Her window screen had been pushed out, and a bench from the backyard was placed just beneath it. Skylar had snuck out, something she'd done before, but never without texting someone or leaving a note. Her parents assumed she had stayed over at a friend's house, but by lunchtime, when she still hadn't returned, they began to worry. At 4 p.m., her mom called the police. The first hours of the investigation focused on Skylar's inner circle: her phone, social media, and most importantly, her two best friends. Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf both said they had picked Skylar up around midnight. According to their version of events, they drove around, smoked marijuana for a while, and then dropped her off back at the apartment complex about an hour later. They claimed she wanted to be let out at the corner so as not to wake her parents. This seemed believable at first, until investigators obtained footage from a neighbor's security camera. At 12:31 a.m., a car was seen pulling up to the Neese residence. Skylar was seen getting in, but there was no footage of her returning an hour later. No car, no figure walking back, nothing. Sheila and Rachel had lied, or at least left something out. Still, without any signs of foul play, police initially treated the case as a runaway. Skylar was labeled as missing but not endangered, which significantly slowed public response and media attention. In the meantime, Sheila Eddy posted concerned tweets. She retweeted search posters. She comforted Skylar's parents. She even cried with them on their couch. She also tweeted this: "No one on this earth can handle me and Rachel. If you think you can, you're wrong." A few days later, Rachel tweeted, "Lord, forgive me, for I have sinned." At the time, no one thought much of it. In hindsight, they read like confessionals. As the days turned into weeks, Skylar's parents became increasingly desperate. They put up missing posters, spoke to the press, and pleaded with anyone who might know something. But leads were scarce. Sheila Eddy remained involved, perhaps too involved. She helped hand out flyers. She constantly texted Mary Niece, asking if there were any updates. To many, she appeared to be the worried best friend. But behind the scenes, investigators were growing suspicious. Phone records showed inconsistencies in Sheila and Rachel's timeline. Their stories didn't match perfectly. GPS data from the car that picked up Skylar showed it had traveled far outside the city that night, nowhere near where they claimed to have dropped her off. In the fall of 2012, the FBI became involved. That same month, Rachel Schoaf began to pull away. Her behavior changed. She became withdrawn, paranoid. She had trouble at school and in her personal life. By December, she suffered what was described as a complete emotional breakdown. She was hospitalized in a psychiatric facility. Meanwhile, Sheila continued tweeting as if nothing had happened. Wonder if there's a law to being too sexy. Always keep your cool. Skylar's parents began to suspect Sheila. Deep down, they felt that something wasn't right. In January 2013, 5 months after Skylar went missing, Rachel Schoaf was released from psychiatric care. 2 weeks later, she walked into a police station and confessed. The officers were stunned. She told them, "We stabbed her. Me and Sheila, we killed Skylar." Rachel Schoaf's confession was chilling in its simplicity. She explained that she and Sheila had planned Skylar's murder for weeks. They had discussed it openly. When, where, and even what to bring. Their reason? We just didn't like her anymore. On the night of July 5th, they packed kitchen knives, paper towels, bleach, clean clothes, and a shovel. They picked up Skylar shortly after midnight, pretending it was just another casual night drive. They told her they wanted to go to their usual spot, a quiet wooded area across the Pennsylvania state line where they had hung out before. Skylar, trusting them, agreed. Once they arrived, all three girls got out of the car. Rachel claimed they had brought marijuana and began setting up. Then they counted to 3. On 3, they pulled out their knives and began stabbing Skylar. She fought back, screamed, and tried to run. She was small, but she was strong, and she fought until she collapsed. According to Rachel, Skylar's last words were, "Why?" They left her in the woods, covered her body with branches and dirt, changed clothes, and returned home. Later, they threw away the knives and bloody clothes. When investigators asked Rachel where the body was, she led them to the site. At first, snow and weather conditions delayed recovery. But in March 2013, human remains were found in Greene County, Pennsylvania. DNA confirmed it was Skylar Niece. She'd been stabbed more than 50 times. After the confession, Sheila Eddy continued to deny involvement. She attended school, went to prom, and posted selfies, all while the investigation closed in around her. But eventually, with Rachel agreeing to testify, prosecutors charged Sheila with first-degree murder. She was arrested in September 2013. Sheila showed little emotion during her arrest. She pled guilty in January 2014. Rachel Schoaf received a 30-year sentence with eligibility for parole after 10 years. Sheila Eddy was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The murder of Skylar Niece sent shockwaves through her community. The idea that 2 seemingly average teenage girls, her closest friends, could plan and carry out such a brutal act was almost impossible to process. Skylar's parents, Mary and Dave, were devastated but determined to fight for change. One of their first goals was to fix the way law enforcement responded to missing teens. Because Skylar had been initially labeled as a runaway, the urgency around her disappearance was minimal. It wasn't until weeks later that the case was treated as suspicious. In response, the Skylar's Law was introduced and passed in West Virginia in 2013. It requires immediate public announcements, like Amber Alerts, for any missing child believed to be in danger, regardless of whether they're labeled as a runaway. Schuyler's Law has since been used in multiple states as a model for quicker response protocols. At school, Schuyler's memory was honored with vigils, tributes, and permanent memorials. But the wounds ran deep. Teachers, classmates, and friends struggled to understand how two students from the same classrooms and hallways could have hidden such hatred and acted on it with such cruelty. Both Sheila Eddy and Rachel Schoaf are currently serving their sentences in separate facilities in West Virginia. Rachel has expressed remorse in letters and court statements. Sheila has remained largely silent. Neither has publicly explained in depth why they did it. The only known motive remains Rachel's words. We just didn't like her anymore. For many, the motive is the most disturbing part. It's emptiness. Skylar Neese would have turned 28 this year. Her parents still live in West Virginia. Her bedroom remains untouched, a quiet reminder of the daughter they lost not to a stranger, but to the people she once trusted most. They've spoken publicly about their grief, but also about forgiveness. Mary Neese once said in an interview, "I want them to have to think about what they did, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life hating. That would mean they still have power." What makes this case so haunting isn't just the brutality of the act. It's the familiarity of it, the late-night drives, the inside jokes, the trust between teenagers who thought they were inseparable. There were no signs of abuse, no long simmering conflict, just two girls who decided inexplicably to end the life of someone who called them family. Even now, many questions remain unanswered. Why did they do it? Was there something deeper behind, "We just didn't like her anymore"? And how could two 16-year-olds keep such a dark secret for so long? Skylar's story reminds us that danger doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes it sits beside you, laughs with you, calls you best friend. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel and it will help us collect more information about murders and other cases.